Ever since the 50s, political advertisements have been a very vital part of elections, as it's one of the relatively easiest ways for candidates to get in touch with voters. Rather than having to go to every single one of them and say, "Hi, I'm blank. This is my plan for the country or state or whatever." They can just make some minute-long thing that explains that to basically everybody in their area, either by showing something incredibly positive about themselves or something incredibly negative about their opponent. In fact, political advertisement has become so prominent that many of them are actually a lot more prevalent than the election that they're from. And to prove so, I'm going to be showing off 10 political advertisements that I think are pretty prevalent. At least for me. And believe it or not, there are basically no stipulations. They can be from any election, any era, whatever, as long as they're political advertisements that I thought was really interesting. Alright, here we go. Number 10, austerity doesn't work. Now this one is sort of the black sheep of the list, as not only was it not made in America, it was made by the British Labour Party, but it also wasn't even made during a campaign cycle. This ad was instead made as a response to the Tory party's more austerity-driven cutbacks to their budget, and shows how those plans will actually work in action. You start by cutting teachers' wages. Now all of a sudden, that teacher can't go out to eat. Now, restaurants are making less money, so they can't afford to make renovations or, if it's that dire, repairs that are needed to make their restaurants better. As such, construction companies now don't have as many jobs, so now in order to make up for their employees, they either have to cut hours or lay people off. So now construction workers have to go to government to get welfare, and rinse and repeat. It's a very good way to simplify the issue. And while the ad itself didn't trigger the no confidence snap election, it might have had a factor to play. Number 9, Gary Chambers ads. This one requires a little bit of context. Gary Chambers is a Democratic Senate candidate in the state of Louisiana in the 2022 midterms. Now, hearing that biography, you already know losing battle, and don't think Gary doesn't know that. So, for his Senate bid, he's been making some intentionally provocative ads to force people to know who he is. The one that got most people's attention was his ad, 37 Seconds, where he talks about how every 37 seconds, people are arrested for low-level marijuana possession, all while smoking a blunt, breaking a very obvious taboo. Another ad that has gotten a lot of people's attention is entitled Roe v. Wade, A Real American Horror Story, where he shows in very graphic detail a botched back alley abortion. But of all of his ads, I would say his best one would be the one entitled Scars and Bars, an ad where he talks about how while on paper, black people have the same rights as white people, the scars of white supremacy remain. All the while, he pours gasoline on the good old stars and bars and sets it ablaze. The very idea that he would do this in Louisiana takes massive guts, and you have to give him props, at least for that. Number 8, Republican Convention ad. The 1964 election was the year of political ads, because a lot of the ones from this cycle became really famous in their own right. However, one that seemingly kind of goes under the radar is this ad. If I had to take a guess, I would say it's because it tackles a similar crowd to Confessions of a Republican, a 4-minute long ad where a actor playing a Republican basically says, "Oh, I can't vote for Barry Goldwater." But this one, I would argue, does that, but better. This one has a lot more atmosphere, as it's shot as if it were on the Republican convention floor, with a person walking up to campaign signs of 3 of the big-name Republicans who opposed Barry Goldwater, George Romney, Nelson Rockefeller, and William Scranton, reciting quotes from them, denouncing Goldwater, ending by saying,
"So, even if you're a Republican with serious doubts about Barry Goldwater, you're in good company."
The thing about Confessions from a Republican is that it's staged all the way through, while the Republican convention ad, while it's yes, it is staged, it's not staged in its messaging. The ad was so poignant that people actually thought about bringing it back for the 2020 election. Speaking of, number 7, I'm Joe Biden. I can't talk about this ad without spoiling it, so here you go, the ad in its entirety.
If I lose to him, I don't know what I'm going to do. I will never speak to you again. You'll never see me again.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
And no, it's real. This is from the Joe Biden official campaign account. Ergo, it's an actual ad. Nothing else to say. Short and sweet, pretty funny. Number 6, Paul Wellstone's ads. I was originally going to put one of the two ads here, but honestly, I really can't decide which of the two to pick. So it's a two-way tie from Paul Wellstone's inaugural campaign ads. Northwood's advertising is well known for their eccentric political ads, and these two are absolutely no exception. The first one I'm going to show off is Fast-Paced Paul. The ad is formatted to be a typical candidate giving their platform ad, but at the beginning, Paul Wellstone says that since he doesn't open his campaign to corporations, he doesn't have enough money to buy more than 30 seconds, so he has to go through it fast. The second one is entitled Looking for Rudy, a campaign ad that was a parody of the Michael Moore film, Roger and Me. Paul in the place of Michael, and Rudy in the place of Roger. This one tackles the idea of the incumbent senator not being around for his constituents, as Paul keeps trying to get in touch with him, but doesn't get through. Honestly, both of these really show Wellstone's sort of rural populist attitude. And of course, he ended up getting the last laugh. Number 5, Nathan Deal's winning ad. This ad also requires a lot of explaining, but I assure you, it is well worth this spot. Okay, so in the 1992 elections, the incumbent representative in Georgia District 9 retired from the seat, and 2 people went up to the bat to try and replace him. State Senator Nathan Deal and another state senator by the name of Tom Ramsey. Ramsey had had a long career in Georgia before Deal, and as such, he was seen as the frontrunner of the race, with many people basically saying it was a done deal for Ramsey. And 2 days before the election, Ramsey had bought 30 minutes of airtime to use for a town hall infomercial that was basically going to be his closing ad in the race. Nathan Deal decided to scrounge up enough money to buy the 30 seconds right before his town hall and air this. That ad not only derailed the race, but it derailed Ramsey's entire political career, as after that, he couldn't even get his old job back. Number 4, The America ad. I'll be honest, this one's probably on here a lot more for personal reasons, but this ad really struck a chord with me when I first saw it. It's nothing really too big. It's footage of Bernie rallies and generic farmers put over the Simon and Garfunkel song America. It was played right before Iowa and New Hampshire, so this ad was essentially Bernie's closing argument. And how well did it do? Well, I'd say over 4 million views and 68k likes means that it did decently well. And even the mainstream media, who were not necessarily the nicest to Bernie, had to concede that this ad was way better than the Hillary ad that was airing around the same time, which was a standard ad like, oh, Hillary's the best choice for president, da-na-na. Meanwhile, this one was more people-oriented. What else can I say except it's very Bernie? Number 3, Ike for president. Remember that spiel I gave at the beginning where I talked about how the 50s were sort of when political advertisements became a lot more prominent? Don't lie, this is the ad that you were thinking of, right? This is the ad that basically comes into most people's head when they even think of the idea of a political ad. Especially since this is when political ads became prominent, it was an incredibly simple, basic ad. Animation of Americans in a sort of parade or march for Dwight Eisenhower to the tune of a catchy jingle, very much like the last one I talked about. Another thing it has in common with the last one is the fact that it's an incredibly positive ad, which will more than likely be the first things that you notice in the comment section of any re-upload of this. Usually having some sort of big hatred towards attack ads and wishing that things would be a lot more like this. kind of ignoring the fact that there are actually attacks to Democrats in this ad. Though to be fair, they don't really stay that long, they're really just in and out. And for the most part, they're relatively harmless. The only thing that you can actually say is really negative is just the idea that Ike is going forward and Adley's going backwards. Again, not much else to say, just rather catchy, I guess. Number 2, the Green New Deal Maker. This one, again, requires some context. During the 2020 election, incumbent Senator Ed Markey was seemingly going to breeze through the election with no problem whatsoever, as Massachusetts is an area where even if a Democrat gets an opponent in the primary, the incumbent is very much poised to win very handily. That was until Representative Joe Kennedy III decided to challenge him. And in case you don't know, no, it's not just a coincidence. So now Ed Markey has to try and beat the dynasty that rules Massachusetts politics. I know, for an incumbent senator, the odds seem to be really against him in this race. But Markey got some very interesting allies in the race. Young progressive activists. I know, again, big shocker. Those are the people that usually try to primary the old incumbents, not keep them in office. But the thing was, Markey was very much aligned with the progressives on many issues, being the Senate co-sponsor of the Green New Deal. And while Kennedy kept trying to say, oh no, me and Markey are essentially in complete agreement, progressives were very much doubtful that the rich trust fund kid was going to be super supportive of progressive causes. And as such, Markey essentially ran to the progressives as his last-ditch effort to stay in office. So he had to do everything in his power to make sure that everybody noticed that this politician that has served for over 40 years was more like AOC than the person who was closer to AOC's age. So Markey actually decided to make an ad showing his long-standing political career, particularly the parts that would strike a chord with the progressives. From his desk literally being thrown out of his office because he didn't align with the political establishment, to getting money for the fishing industry, to fighting for a nuclear freeze, and the rest of his 500 laws that he managed to pass, and decides to tout endorsements from every single faction of the Democratic Party. And for one final mic drop, he decides to take the legacy that Kennedy is running on and twist it in his own face.
We asked what we could do for our country. We went out. We did it. With all due respect, it's time to start asking what your country can do for you.
And after hearing that, I reacted so much so that I actually got the attention of the Kennedy campaign. Before I unveil number 1, here's some honorable mentions. If there are any that you think should have been on here, leave a comment below.
Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Old MacDonald had a farm back in 31. Conditions filled him with alarm back in 31.
So vote Paul Coverdale in the Senate and put White Fowler out.
Bullshit.
What?
Carter, Reagan, and Anderson. It's all bullshit.
Movimiento Naranja, el futuro está en tus manos. Movimiento Naranja, Movimiento Ciudadano.
And we are being tested about whether or not we have heart enough, strength enough, soul enough, humanity enough to stand up and to do what is right.
Number 1, the Daisy ad. Of course this ad was guaranteed the number 1 spot. How could it not? It is one of the most well-known and controversial campaign ads in US history. It was literally aired once and never again. Granted, that's more times than KKK for Goldwater, but if that made it to air, maybe it would be the top one instead. This ad, of course, tackled the common theme of Goldwater being far too radical in regards to his foreign policy and would cause nuclear disaster, but doing it in a way that would guarantee people would talk about it. by showing one of the most universally accepted symbols of innocence, a little girl being blown up on live TV. This ad was not only effective, it was probably too effective, hence why it was pulled, which also explains why this ad keeps getting brought up. Due to its effectiveness, it's been parodied, it's been remade. The fact that we still have this ad at all shows how effective it is. It was seen as too controversial to air on TV, but of too much importance to throw away. Remember, this is the era where they recorded over the master tapes of the moon landing, so clearly preservation was not in everybody's best interest. So yeah, those are the 10 best or most prominent political ads that I'm aware of. As I said before, if you have any that you think should have been on the list but aren't, leave them in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, and click that bell to be notified when a future video of mine comes out. And if you're interested in more content from me, you can go to my website, follow me on Twitter, join my Discord, check out my articles in the Independent Political Report, or consider supporting me on Patreon.